Great, Sue, thank you. Well, we're off to Canberra now, where the Environment and Energy Minister, Josh Frydenberg, is speaking.
Provide a blueprint for the energy security of the national electricity market. Today, Dr Finkel has presented his report to the Prime Minister, to the Premiers and to the Chief Ministers. It's a more than 200-page document, a very comprehensive document, and one which we thank the Chief Scientist and his expert panel for their work. The government will now carefully consider the recommendations and the detail in Dr Finkel's report. But what Dr Finkel makes very clear today is that the energy system is undergoing the most dramatic transformation in more than a century, and that business as usual is not an option, because business as usual will lead to higher prices and a less stable system. And as the Prime Minister has made clear, we are determined to pursue an energy policy which puts a priority on engineering and economics, not ideology. Are there any questions?
Mr Frydenberg, in the scheme that's modelled by Alan Finkel in this report has a target of 28% emissions reduction from electricity. A number of experts, including the Climate Change Authority, thinks that the electricity needs to deliver emissions reductions of 60% plus for Australia to meet its Paris target. So my question is, have we given up on the Paris target, or will there be requirements in other sectors of the economy for abatement that we don't know about yet?
Well, as you know, we have a very good record of meeting our international targets. We beat our first Kyoto target, and we're on track to meet and beat our 2020 target by 224 million tonnes, and that involves a whole range of policy settings right across the economy, not just the electricity sector with the renewable energy target, but also the emissions reduction fund and the National Energy Productivity Plan. So every sector has to do its bit. But I do point out that Dr Finkel in his report does issue a note of caution about adopting targets for the electricity sector beyond 28% because of the ramifications it may have for energy security and affordability.
What's your understanding of the dollar value for household savings? Is it around about the $90 a year?
Well, Dr Finkel has said today that on his modelling there will be a reduction in electricity prices by about 10% for households and about 20% for large users. And the reason why large users get a bigger discount is because the wholesale price is a larger component of their bill. But we'll wait and see when he releases his final modelling. But the point is, his recommendation today to the COAG meeting would lead to lower prices.
But the $90 figure is in the government's background on that. Do you stand by that figure?
Well, it's very clear that there will be hundreds of dollars of savings for households as a result of a mechanism as proposed by Dr Finkel, and that he reiterated today that would lead to significant savings for households.
Back to Catherine's question, can you get to 28% using the CET as outlined by Dr Finkel? And if so, what baseline? What would be the minimum baseline to do that?
Well, as you know from Dr Finkel's press conference this afternoon, he hasn't indicated a specific recommendation as to what the baseline should be. That would be a matter for governments. But this is a report from Dr Finkel to the COAG meeting. It's not a report by government, it's a report to government. We will consider it. We have our own internal processes, be they Cabinet and the party room, and we'll let them run its course. But what Dr Finkel has shown today in his mechanism is that you can reduce emissions, but increasingly important today is ensuring the stability of the system as it undergoes dramatic change and getting electricity prices lower, because we know that households are doing it tough.
I get all that, but can you get to 28%? I couldn't find it in the report clearly explained anywhere where you could get to 20%.
Well, Dr Finkel said in his press conference, Phil, that you can meet your Paris targets, which is a 26 to 28% reduction, and he looked at it from a 28% reduction with a pro rata contribution from the electricity sector under his proposed model of a clean energy target.
The CET is an all carrot no stick scheme. In other words, no punishment for high emission generators, but incentives for low emission ones. What are those incentives and who pays for them, Minister?
Well, ultimately you're going to see lower electricity prices overall, Tim, because what the mechanism is designed to do is to generate more investment. Because as Dr Finkel said, we have an ageing fleet and there have been some closures of power stations in recent years, and we need generation to replace that ageing fleet which is closing in various parts of the country. So what the incentives do is they encourage, whether it's renewables, gas or indeed coal with carbon capture and storage under Dr Finkel's model, into the system. There are certificates, a bit like the RET process that is currently underway, that retailers are required to buy, but ultimately the consumers are better off because they have seen the wholesale component of their electricity bill increase dramatically in recent years, and one of the reasons for that has been a lack of new generation coming into the market outside of renewables.
I'm a bit confused about something Dr Finkel said. I'm hoping you can clean it up.
He's the chief scientist, so
Exactly. He said this is not the same thing as CET, as a carbon price, but that it is a market-based mechanism that sends a price signal. How can it be one but not the other? How are they not
Well,
the same
James,
thing?
it's very clear. It's only incentivising emissions. Only incentivising emission-reducing technology and generation by the certificates that are generated by these companies, be they providing coal, gas, or indeed renewable technology. So that's an incentive. What a carbon price, or indeed what the EIS proposed by the Labor Party would do, would be punishing existing generators. The clean energy target put forward by Dr Finkel doesn't do that, and that's the clear difference.
Would it be your preference that if this scheme is adopted from post-2020 that the states also end their various renewable energy target schemes and just come under the national framework?
Well, Dr Finkel himself has made it very clear in his report that his preference is for a national scheme. And having states run off and adopt their own renewable energy targets, which are not technology neutral, as opposed to his clean energy target, is not the way we should be thinking about the integration of energy and climate policy in this country. Last night, Dr Finkel presented an overview of his report to the energy ministers from COAG in a teleconference that we had, and certainly the response from the states and the territories were very positive, and indeed their leaders reiterated that today at the press conference. So we'll just wait and see. There's a long way to go in this process, and indeed the states should be thinking about their preference, which is for a national, holistic scheme as opposed to individual state-based ones.
So what outcome do you want there to be when you have this other COAG meeting between now and August? There's some kind of August deadline, isn't there, for an outcome from COAG on this report? Do you want that deadline to endorse the idea of a clean energy target? Do you want states to give up on their state-based targets in that timeframe?
David, there are no hard deadlines here other than what Dr Finkel has said today, which is this is a priority issue, and that business as usual will only lead to higher electricity prices. Now, we have internal processes. There are lots of discussions to be had with colleagues, and I wouldn't dare preempt those discussions. Many of my colleagues have their own views on these issues, having debated them in the Parliament for some time. Our priority as a party is on the trilemma, is on a more affordable energy system, a more stable energy system, and one that meets our international commitments.
Tony Abbott wants coal to be in the mix. Do you think that what's outlined today would satisfy Tony Abbott in terms of keeping coal in the mix?
Well, Dr. Finkel made the point very strongly in his press conference, which was it was technology neutral, the mechanism that he had put forward, and that coal continues to play an important role. And indeed, under his mechanism, coal would be able to stay in the system longer, and that's one of the reasons why it generates lower prices. Regulatory certainty has been the missing ingredient in energy policy in this country over the last decade. And if we can get more regulatory certainty, we will get more investment. And more investment means lower prices, and that's the goal of the coalition.
Confirming your view today, Minister, that the clean energy target, you think that now is the best way forward?
Well, the Prime Minister said it very clearly in his press conference, which was there are a number of virtues for the clean energy target, namely it is technology neutral, it lowers electricity prices, and it is a proven method. But we have a long way to go in this debate. There's a lot at stake, and I don't want to preempt my internal processes.
Rather than confirming what the Prime Minister said, I'm asking what your view is. Is that also your view? Is that a shared view?
Sure, absolutely. The Prime Minister and I have been in close contact on this issue, as well as I've been in close contact with a lot of my other colleagues.
And on the issue of coal that you were just talking about, can you tell us, do you see any new power stations being built in Australia if a clean energy target were to be implemented?
It's very simple. The mechanism put forward by Dr. Finkel today would not prohibit a new coal-fired power station in Australia. Thanks.